Dan Bishop, we want to go out live now to the Hilltop Restaurant. We don't have it live, but we just understand that he did concede now to Jeff Jackson for the Attorney General. We just got that information here in our ear. So sorry to interrupt you there, but we wanted to get that information out there as soon as possible. Yeah. So let's go back over to you, Dr. Bitzer here, and talk about that. Dan Bishop here, and then we'll go back to the Michelle Morrow thing.
Right. It looks like Jeff Jackson has a little under 52% of the vote to Dan Bishop's 48%. You know, what's interesting is that there is a very tight dynamic at play in the Council of State. You're seeing Democrats with 52%, you're seeing Republicans with 52%. I think that this really speaks to the small sliver of North Carolina's voters who tend to bounce down the ballot, but for the most part, most of the electorate appears to be solidly locked in to one party over the other, and these potential swing voters really do make the difference here in North Carolina.
Dr. Roberts, we can stay with the Council of State because we talked about a number of these seats for sure, but some of these Mecklenburg County folks, we had Wesley Harris, we had Natasha Marcus, and we had Braxton Winston, and even though Jeff Jackson and some of the other folks up the Council of State have seen success tonight on the Democratic side, it doesn't seem like they're seeing that same success. What in the numbers is showing, and what part of the state is showing that they didn't get support in those parts?
Well, I think some of it was the eastern part of the state from what I've glanced at it. And I also think, too, as Michael pointed out, it's the bouncing back and forth, but I think candidate quality in terms of the Morrow and Green race, in terms of ideology, and Morrow was a little along the same lines, fairly eccentric by most voter standards. So I'm surprised, but then I'm from Mecklenburg County, and so I think that I was looking at this and thinking I was, surprised about especially Braxton Winston.
Not doing as well as a lot of people had expected. Dr. Bitzer, one of the things I think has been overlooked out of this is since 2020, North Carolina did gain an electoral vote here. They went from 15 to 16. Talk about that a little bit, and also talk about some of the other states that lost electoral votes that could come into play here tonight.
Yeah, certainly the South, as evident by North Carolina, by Georgia, continues to increase in terms of population. We may pick up another electoral vote when the 2030 census comes around. We'll just have to see how the population dynamic plays out. But the Rust Belt, the Midwest, the blue wall states that we've been talking about have been losing population. That has been shifting to the South and to the Southwest. So this is a new kind of dynamic. If Republicans can continue to hold the South, which it looks like they've also held Georgia for President Trump, that's going to be a core component of the Republican electoral base in the South.
All right, Dr. Bitzer, thanks. Now we do have Dan Bishop out there at the Hilltop Restaurant in Monroe. Let's go ahead and listen into him and his concession speech.
Political confidant of my personal confidant of mine, and a guy that I always love to have the chance to bounce things off of, and you won't find a more devoted friend than him. I want to recognize Caroline Winchester, who's here tonight, and Heather Willier, who works with her, for the great push they gave us in fundraising. Obviously, running against a machine that the Democrats have in North Carolina is just an extraordinary experience. Some others in this room have experienced it. It is tough, but those guys managed to get us in position to be competitive financially, and I'm grateful to them. Ginger Kelly and Sadie Mayhew have been the treasurers for the campaign, and they kept the books pristine, perfect. Everything's always right on time, and it's always well done, and I can't tell you what a relief that is. I also want to say a moment about my staff in my congressional office. James Hampson's been my chief of staff for 4 years. Austin Macklett, who's my scheduler, who's here tonight, and boy, that's a frustrating job. Melissa Merrill, who's my district director. James Shaver was here earlier. I don't know if James is still here, but he's been terrific as well, and many others. I also want to say thank you to the Republican Attorneys General Association. RAGA committed to this race in a way that was absolutely unbelievable. And well, I mean, they just did everything that could possibly be done, and I'm grateful for the stellar team of Republican Attorneys General across the United States who have committed themselves to building the resources to make Republicans competitive in situations like this. And so especially Sean Reyes, who's of Utah, who's Chairman Steve Marshall of Alabama, Alan Wilson of South Carolina, Ken Paxton of Texas, and to the Executive Director of RAGA, Pete Bisbee. They've been fantastic. And I would say last, I want to say my thanks to President Donald Trump. He has been, from the time in 2019 when I was 9.5 points down or something, and the White House stepped in to help with Mike Pence coming to do multiple events. President Trump did 2 rallies. He's always shared his stage and his microphone that he's provided, and it's just an extraordinary figure in American politics, one that history will remember, I think, for the things that are going to happen. I don't know exactly what the situation is across the country. I certainly am hopeful on behalf of President Trump. I understand North Carolina has been called for him, so we're 3 for 3 for President Trump, and I'm grateful for that.
You've just been listening to Dan Bishop concede here tonight to Jeff Jackson, the Democrat, who is going to be the new Attorney General-elect, as he is going to be defeated. Dan Bishop speaking there from the Hilltop Restaurant in Monroe. So a big win for Democrats on that side of the race, and certainly still waiting to see what happens with the presidential race, Khalid.